Sackbot Barbecue.
And I'm Giggleklutz. And today we are here to talk about a game that is going to have its 25th anniversary of its release at the end of this month.
So you must be here to ask us about Grim Fandango.
What about Grim Fandango?
Well, it's a point-and-click adventure game, and I'm trying to do the math to if it has the 25th anniversary. What year was that?
Okay, it was released on October 30th, 1998, and at that time it was a LucasArts Entertainment production, and now it's done by Double Fine, and it's another thought creation of Tim Schafer's, and since it's been around for 25 years, and we have a history with this game, I played it and bought it when it was brand new, so it's been an underlying note that has played throughout your guys' childhood. So you have had exposure to it at different points in your life as we played it, replayed it, quoted it through time.
Yeah, like, growing up, Talking Skulls to me always felt like a LucasArts thing, because, like, you had Grim Fandango, and then you had, like, Curse of Monkey Island, so just that kind of thought shaped some of my perception of the world.
With good reason. Talking Skulls are a running theme in both of those properties. So that begs the question, do we like it for nostalgic reasons, or is it actually timeless?
Honestly, coming up to a quarter century here, it's a good time to ask that question.
So,
what found our interest and enjoyment in this game? This was definitely a known entity to me when I was growing up. And I say that like I've stopped. But folks were playing it in the room while I was there. I definitely, watched some of it, heard some of its, more memorable quotes and whatnot, but I generally didn't get a lot of it in context.
Yeah, like, for a while, the biggest exposure we also had, like, in a day-to-day life is the fact that there's a reference to it in Minecraft.
There is.
Yeah, there's a painting that's the cocoon being opened and the little guy coming out of it.
Yeah. Wow.
Yep.
That's obscure. Like, that is obscure.
The skull shape definitely matches with the stylization of Grim Fandango very well.
Yeah, which is saying something considering Minecraft has its own way of stylizing skulls.
Yeah.
When you look at the other paintings in Minecraft, this is a huge tangent, but there is one that depicts a fairly realistic skull, so it gives you a notable point of contrast there. But anyway... So yeah, Grim Fandango was a game I had much less, sort of clear memories of compared to something like Minecraft, just to shoehorn that in. But it's like, yeah, I, was familiar with it, I got a lot of its story beats, and just generally the points in the game, not in chronological order, is like, I had broad strokes, but the canvas was a jigsaw puzzle, so I didn't see how they all fit together right away. But so, then much later on, years and years, I ended up, picking up the Steam version.
The remaster.
Yeah, and honestly, I didn't get too far into it first time I tried it, but that seemed promising, but kind of got stuck and moved on to other things. So yeah, I came back sometime after that with my mom.
Hello, I'm your mom.
So yeah, we just wanted to play stuff together. It's like, oh yeah, I own a copy of Grim Fandango. Let's play Grim Fandango. So then we played Grim Fandango.
And this was around the time you guys played Superliminal together, right? Around that time?
Maybe.
Well, no, it was like Superliminal was a big part of, we were on a kick of playing games together, the two of us. Superliminal was, either the start or a notable point in that arc. So yeah, anyway, we got into, playing Grim Fandango again, and it was just a good time, having fun with it. My enjoyment of it was not just, like, seeing all these scattered bits I remember, and, finally getting more context for them. There's a bunch of stuff in between those notable moments that I did not remember.
And you probably wouldn't have remembered them because they wouldn't be important to you when you were a little kid. I mean, how does it feel to play a game that's older than you? I can't do that, really, with video games. I'm old enough that I am older than pretty much all modern video games. I think, like, Pong is older than me, but there's not a lot that's actually older than me. So it's like, I'm the first generation of... Well, actually, my dad is the first generation of parent, of video game kid, but they didn't think video games were for little kids, and you guys have been raised with video games since babyhood. We can get into that in a little, some other point, but just a quick note is like, I had some friends that really thought that we were making the wrong decision letting Honeyshuckle sit on her father's lap and play Resident Evil when she was a toddler.
Well, I mean, it might have scarred me, but I don't think it was the video game part that did that.
But anyway, I have completely different feelings than I did then as a young mother about their judgment. I have the same feelings about video games that I did then. Video games only bring out what you got in you, for the most part. So anyway, how does it feel to play a game that's older than you?
Well, I do that on a, it's not an uncommon thing for me. And there's some distinctly different types of video games that fall into that category of just being older than me, so I don't really have any, specific feelings about it, really. It's just kind of a given.
Yeah, I mean, I've tried to play games that are older than me, Mario, Zelda, those first kind of iterations, and they didn't really stick with me. They didn't jive well. I'm just like, I could be doing something else. But that's an entirely different style to this.
Yeah, a point I didn't get to when I was, explaining my prior relationship with the game, how it contrasted with actually playing it, for the first time recently-ish. It's just like, yeah, sure, there were those, nostalgic bits I got to reconnect with, but I found a whole bunch of stuff I liked that I wasn't expecting. I had a whole new relationship to the game from, sitting down and consciously playing it.
Yeah, because, the stuff that sticks with you as a child isn't necessarily the same stuff that's going to stick with you as an adult.
Oh, it's like a second-hand observer who hasn't had a lot of experience is just gonna, fixate on the bit where they said, fly like eagles on pogo sticks, and not the subtext of the story, how well it executes its art style. So much nuance you miss from...
Although you guys did like the soundtrack even when you were little. So, it's like, music is something you guys have always had an appreciation for.
Just the point is, I came back to it, and I didn't pick up on all the good bits, at the time. I came back and found a deeper richness to it.
Mm-hmm. And it holds up. You can pick it up today, have no background in it, and while it will be clunky's 90s technology, it's still a good game.
Yeah, there's some stuff about it that's a little bit dated, like the amount of smoking, security checkpoints...
The walking.
The walking. Oh, the walking.
Yes. And while they did use it to great effect, you spend a lot of time watching Manny walk across the screen, which gives you an amazing sense of scale. But you only need to do that the first time to get the idea, and then after that you shouldn't have to watch it every time you need to go someplace. But it's the 90s. This is a big step up. This was I don't know if it's the first or one of the first real attempts at making a video game cinematic. There's a cinematic element to this point-and-click adventure game.
Yeah, and you're not just talking about, the cutscenes, because, the cutscenes use the same models, even, but using the same models for this makes it so that way just every interaction is slightly of the same cinematic quality, right? Slightly.
Right, but it was cinematic in that it pulls from a film style, in the way it uses its dialogue, in its aesthetic, in the dramatic score. All of it, it's really played into bringing what movies do for an audience into a video game, while keeping it pretty well paced and adding puzzles and playful dialogue. It's having fun with it too. It's not just, it didn't go full art film the first time you try and when you're like, how do I make a puzzle game cinematic? Well, Grim Fandango is how you do it and still keep your audience engaged in the playfulness of both the world and the interactions in the world. I'm smiling. I'm waving my arms around and smiling. I have fun with this game, even 25 years later.
Yeah, I just finished replaying the game a month ago not a month, still, I just recently finished replaying the game because we were going to talk about it, and yeah, like what Sackbot was saying is that just, there's a lot of stuff that just completely goes over your head.
When you're little.
When you're little, and then you come back and it's like, oh, yeah, that's pretty funny. I mean, one of the, like, really surface level ones that went over my head is, like, there's this demon, Glottis, who is a mechanic, and he really likes tinkering with machines and making them go vroom, 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 vroom. And I realized, replaying this, like, oh my god, he's a speed demon.
Which is a connection I had never made in all the times I've played this. And, you know...
Oh yeah, you weren't there when I made this connection, were you, Sackbot? You're giggling now.
I can't believe I didn't think of that.
Yeah. And maybe that whole pun was the whole creation of the demons in the first place. Who knows? So, it's timeless. You know, we go back wondering if it's nostalgia, only to be welcomed into something timeless. Which, I think that's a huge compliment. It's one of the biggest compliments I can give a game that's decades old, is that it's timeless.
Yeah, coming back to it, you know, there's just so much substance. It makes the most of its dated graphics.
Right. Well, before we talk about graphics, can we talk about puzzles? Because, being a puzzle game, there's a lot of puzzles. And the way that we think about puzzles and puzzle innovation has changed a lot over time. And it's weird thinking about puzzle innovation. But yeah, if you play a lot of puzzle games, you'll know that there were certain conventions of certain time periods. And the point-and-click genre is an old genre of puzzle game. And they have kind of specific kind of formats for their puzzles. And this one kind of breaks convention in a lot of ways.
You're not gonna find any buckets of snow here.
It's like, yeah, when I look back at Grim Fandango's puzzles, I don't immediately look back on any specific one and say, that's stupid.
Right.
I mean, maybe some of them will be like, oh my god, but none of them are just
Like, I don't understand how anybody thought to make this a puzzle, let alone how anyone was going to solve it. That's not a thing that happened to me in this game.
Right. Not in Grim Fandango.
No.
In Grim Fandango, they did two things. One, they gave you a limited amount of options at any given time and clear out your inventory on a regular basis. You don't have a whole bunch of items, nor very many places where you can use them, so it's easy to go through and just try things, and the dialogue and the game reacts when you do things, which encourages you to keep trying. So
Yeah.
you may not get the solution, but trying things that don't work might give you a hint as to what actually you're supposed to do or what you're looking for. And it just has you lean into curiosity. It makes your curiosity pay off. They put jokes in trying things that are obviously not going to work. And they make some things work that are not the solution.
like, yeah, you can use the can opener on this can of cat food. It doesn't do anything. You don't need any cat food, but you use the can opener.
Yes, exactly that. And you can see what it looks like when it works, think about what it is. And also, they leaned into each object getting to stay what it is. You didn't all of a sudden have to use this object as a pun in a different spot, like Monkey Island games tend to do. It's like, oh, this word's a homonym for that word, so you're going to use this object for something it absolutely would not work for in real life.
It's like you don't bump into somebody who's telling you you can't do something and then you use the can opener to get them to let you do it.
Right. You might not know exactly what you're doing or why when you're trying things, but once you see the solution, it'll make logical sense, and the more you seek, there will have been clues as to that answer. Now, whether or not you remember them because they might have been from, like, 2 acts ago in the game, there will have been clues that were available to you the whole time to let you know no puzzle is there as a monolith sitting by itself that you're just supposed to figure out through sheer force of will. Everything has a lead up to it that you can find either through the clues in the game, through your own brain logic, or also from just trying things via leaning into curiosity. All 3 of those work. All 3 of those have their own sort of fun to them. If you're the kind of person who likes trying all the possibilities, this is the game for you, really. Because you will be rewarded more often than normal.
Yeah, and also, in the Steam version here, there are achievements for finding, like, niche dialogue in the game, which is...
which didn't exist originally, so...
Yeah.
It felt really interesting to know that, like, you know, you guys played through it, and, like, there's some of these that you did not get. Some of them were definitely there, probably, when you played, because I had to play the beginning multiple times because I thought I got stuck. I didn't. The game wasn't glitching out. It was just a me thing.
Yep.
And it's like, yeah, all the stuff you end up doing ultimately does make sense, but it might be hard to think of it in the first place.
Right.
You know, it gets somewhere that works and will typically at least make sense when it's done or outright have comedic payoff.
Indeed.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely indeed. Which makes a great game to go back to. If you have it in your library already, I recommend you go play it. And to go back to Honeyshuckle talking about she thought it glitched out on her, and just to let our audience know, if we experience a game-breaking glitch, we're not going to come on the podcast and recommend the game. We're going to be really transparent about the fact that we bumped into wonkiness and it didn't work. No, we ran into human error, which could happen to anybody.
Yeah, I was directed to solve a particular puzzle, and I did that and then didn't explore any other option because I'm like, alright, I'm here now. So, yeah. It turns out all I needed was one screen.
Happens.
Happens.
So, in trying to solve the puzzles, one of the things you have to do is spend a lot of time talking to people. And this game has a lot of dialogue and very good voice acting.
Yeah, fully voice acted.
Oh, yeah. And what?
I just talking about the dialogue, there's only one thing that sticks in my mind. How about I hold that metal detector for you while you cry?
Oh boy. Yeah. We didn't have a plan to talk too much about characters and characterization, but I'm really glad for the dynamic growth of the main character, Manuel Calavera, because while he's never a saint, he does start out as a bigger asshole in the beginning than he is at the end. But yeah, there's lines to this game that have stuck with me throughout time. Just like, you know, not to sound like a capitalist oppressor, but I have people that do that for me now. I was like, what? What was that in a video game? It's like, this is in an Aztec Art Deco styled afterlife. We have a guy talking about communist manifestos and just what?
It's like, yeah, like I said, this game has legitimate depth and wasn't just, oh hey, it's cool because a video game has never done this before. It's also a cool video game because it does that at all.
Right, and I'm not gonna participate in the who did what first. It's just what we were exposed to first. You know what I mean? Because it's just any media, there's no way to have consumed the entirety of it, no matter what. There's just too many people, too much going on, and too big a world.
Clearly what we need to do is cause an apocalypse, and then we can, not have any more art for a little bit, and we can have the time to go back and go through the entire back catalog.
Guess who's been playing too much Cookie Clicker? Which I didn't admit last episode, but when I was loading the blog for the Cookie Clicker episode, I had to click on it to put a link in it, and I ended up starting playing, and it's consumed a lot more of my life than I want to admit. I couldn't even do it last episode.
Are you on your, still in your second ascension, or?
No comment.
Okay.
In case you missed the Cookie Clicker lore episode, it's kind of a thing where it slowly takes over everything, so you can see that demonstrated here, as it's come up in 2 episodes since we've talked about it.
It's like sand, it gets into everything.
There's sand in your cookies?
No, that's just crumbles.
Oh.
Or they're pecan sandies.
Okay, so are we going to talk about Grim Fandango, or am I going to have to shoehorn in also the, you know what? No, forget it.
Well, we're just doing a demonstration of some of the things that Grim Fandango dialogue can sound like.
I don't think so. I don't think you're doing that.
Oh, okay.
I think you're being a goof, is what I think. So, lots of good dialogue. Lots of good characterization through dialogue.
The game has a lot of interesting topics to talk about.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm gonna talk about, the very beginning of the game, the very opening of this game here. Because, when you start the game, you see the skeletal man sitting in an office, and he's approached by the Grim Reaper, who's our playable character, Manny Calavera, and, he starts talking about how, this newly deceased person is going to have to walk to the end of the world and pass on, But he doesn't have to walk, because there are travel packages, and it's just this... It feels wrong in that funny way, where it's like, this should not be happening. I died and I'm still stuck in a capitalist hellscape.
This was supposed to end when that life did. No, thank you. No, thank you. And then, yeah, you die, and then you wake up in this, you are ushered into the new capitalist hellscape. Yay! With all of its nuance and corruption and...
pitfalls and...
Yeah, they're on a lot of high points, really.
Mm-hmm. The land of the dead has seen better days. A lot better days.
You gotta hope so. You gotta hope so. Just the amount of decline that the land of the dead goes through in the 4 years that Manny's there, you gotta think that it started someplace better than that. And there's gotta be a hope of getting to something similar. Because, the nature of change is that you never go back, but maybe you do bring some of those elements that were lost in the downfall back.
Or something new.
Right. Well, a lot of those new things that stick will have the notes of the old.
True.
But the cycle isn't like a complete loop. It's more like a spiral. So anything else you want to talk about in the dialogue?
It does do a lot of things that, serve the purpose of, point-and-click adventure game, puzzle gameplay. Well, doesn't sound forced, really.
Yeah, you can tell your dialogue is well written when I get disappointed I picked the correct option first try.
Because often, in most games, when you do that, it makes the rest of the options go away. In this one, it doesn't really most of the time.
It can.
It can, but a lot of times it doesn't. A lot of times those stay there.
Yeah, well, there can be sometimes where you just, say the right thing and then the character runs off. And,
That's true.
That's... Yeah. It can happen with Glottis.
Oh, yes, it can happen with Glottis. And, am I alone in this, or Glottis is the favorite character, right? This is a story where it's a Glottis stan.
Glottis makes the plot go.
Glottis for life, man. Yes!
Yeah, the plot goes vroom!
Yeah. Oh my God.
He's great.
He's the best friend you could never ask for, because you have to find him. You can't just ask for it.
Yeah. And it's you're too good for us, Glottis. Yeah. Anyway, I'm sorry, I used an opportunity to as annoying as that gets after a while, when you're stuck in the petrified forest, and trust me, you will be stuck in the petrified forest for a while, Glottis sits there in the bone wagon, making vroom noises to himself. And while it's kind of annoying while you're running around, it's so endearing when it's over. It's he's not bored, no matter what happens. He keeps himself busy and no big deal. I'm driving in my mind. You go, speed demon. You go.
This is a guy who knows just how to be happy.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. It's everybody needs a little more Glottis in their life, yes.
Perhaps not too much, but definitely more.
Yeah. Breathe. It's okay to breathe. Okay, you need another one. All right.
Glottis.
All right. So, I know Shuckle's been itching this whole time to talk about aesthetics and lore. So, go.
Bring it on.
You're gonna force this on me right after the Glottis thing? Oh boy. Okay, so I don't know if people listening to this know a lot about, mythology involving, Central South American, Aztecish death, the realm of the dead, but, this game captures quite a bit of that while also having, the modern elements at the same time, sure, there's, like, no real, like, Grim Reaper figure in the Aztec mythology, but, like, the dead do go back once a year to visit the realm of the living, and that is touched upon in the game. There's the fact that death is not, like, a permanent realm, unlike in, like, Christian heaven and hell. Like, you can die in the realm of the dead. Some cases, Grim Fandango goes, like, more murder-oriented than,
Sad face.
Sad face.
Sad face.
Sad face. Yeah, the fact that there is death at all in the realm of the dead lends itself very well to its source. And, like, it's definitely its own thing, but it shows this element that they at least did some research and knew what kinds of things were more relevant to their setting. And honestly, it's really cool. Like, there's plenty of art even these days that doesn't do, like, the basics of knowing the mythology it's pulling from. So even that very basic direction is very cool.
It was ahead of its time as far as that goes. There weren't a lot of examples, especially then, of people pulling from cultures, but also trying to respect them at the same time. You know, I wouldn't hold it to modern standards for some of that, but social media really changed a lot of how we look at, like, cultural appropriation. And, you know, it's like, I'm sure there were nuanced pockets of people having these conversations in relative isolation, because it's just not a conversation most people are interested in having, especially not back then. It's just a kid to, are you calling me a racist? And usually in the 90s, that would just end a conversation. Nobody ever talked about things in my circles beyond that. And, you know, that probably says more about my circles than about stuff. But media was network television back then, you know, as far as you had 4 channels. It was, you know, there was cable, but not everybody had it. It wasn't an expectation that everybody had cable, even back then. So, I don't know. Common media was a lot more common. You know, it's like, even if you didn't watch, you couldn't watch all the shows on all 4 networks, you probably were aware of all the TV shows that existed on the main networks, because you'd watch something on that channel and you'd see advertisements for it. That kind of thing. Anyway, I don't even remember where I'm going with this now.
Yeah, it's just the mainstream of media has, you know, really flooded over compared to where it was back then, and how easily we can talk to each other about it, and how much stuff we have to talk about has increased significantly since the 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah, this game was ahead of its time in that regard, and as somebody who's not part of the culture, like, looking in from the outside, I don't think I've heard of anybody being mad at it for how it handled any of this, or any flaws that are ridiculously wrong. Like, it's its own thing. That helps a lot.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it didn't ever make the culture the butt of a joke.
True.
Which is the main pitfall that people using an aesthetic from a specific culture fall into. And a lot of times they'll just label it as social commentary when really they're making fun of a culture while using it for its own aesthetic. And I don't see that happening in this at all. You know, the jokes are about corruption. They're not about the culture. They're about the way the culture's being corrupted itself in the narrative.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not about, it's about overlays on there that are relatable and are the meat of the story. I don't know.
It doesn't escape me that, like, this choice of, like, aesthetic and narrative do go pretty well together, considering, like, how corporations can exploit minorities. In this case, the corporations are exploiting those who have just died, those who are new here and don't understand much.
Let's give a little bit of a thread, because not everybody who's listening will have played this game.
Right, yeah.
So Manny Calavera, your main character, who you get to play, is works for the Department of the Dead in the Land of the Dead. And he's basically a Grim Reaper and goes and gathers souls from the land of the living and sells them, I'm putting sells in quotations, travel packages, because they need to go into the underworld from the land of the dead. And it's a long journey to get there. If you lived a good life while you were alive on Earth, you get a ticket on the number 9 train, and then the travel packages just downgrade from there to worst case scenario, you will get put in a coffin and packed in packing foam.
Or, like, is that even the worst? Like, I mean, yeah, it's pretty bad, but then there's also a walking stick.
Yeah.
Like, because, like, at least if you're in packing foam, you know, it's out of your hands what happens.
I don't know.
It's
There's a lot that could happen to you, yes.
It's a very subjective thing. It's like those two choices are going to be very much better or worse on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, it all depends on your trauma history, quite honestly.
Either way, they both stink.
Yes.
Yeah, neither of those options are good.
So anyway, the system becomes quite obvious pretty quickly that the system is corrupted and that people aren't getting the rewards that they deserve for the lives that they have lived in the land of the living. And, you know, the whole story comes down to Manny trying to figure out what's going on so he can serve justice to the last person he ushered into the land of the dead, which is a lady named Mercedes Calamar, who's referred to as Meche for the rest of the game, mostly.
Mm-hmm. And, yeah, just the fact that his motivation is primarily to right this wrong. Sure, if he gets to move on as well while he's at it, that's icing on top, but he does not want to leave until he's made sure that he's righted the wrongs that he's inadvertently imposed upon Meche. And, like...
And pretty much everything that he does after that, too. It's like, we don't know what he did before, either in the land of the living or working for the Department of the Dead, as their number one salesman for many years. I don't care. We don't get to know that information, so that's not part of what we know, but part of Mandy's character arc, in which is a dynamic arc. He does grow as a person over the course of the game, which... I feel like that doesn't happen very often, and it's sad.
Yeah.
It's sad that that's not a more normal thing.
Like, and even at the beginning, when we question his morals, like, we still don't question, given the chance, would he be an axe murderer? No. But with some point-and-click adventure game, characters, they're just so removed from our reality that they might, if it got them their goals. I never feel that way with Manny.
No, never do. Sorry, I'm just realizing how true that is, and about how there's such a disconnect that it's hard to have empathy for the world and get immersed as a character in a point-and-click adventure a lot of times because of that kind of thing. If the logic of the puzzles or the dialogue or whatever is too fourth wall breaking or too meta to the world or the world of the characters themselves, which this isn't. I mean, they stayed really close to home. There's very little that's... I don't know if there's anything that's fourth wall breaking or anything like that.
I mean, there's, the fact that a lot of what Manny himself will say is for the player's sake and will sometimes be more talking to you directly about things.
Like, there's something that you can make him do that will just make him laugh at you for a solid minute.
Okay.
In a very, sarcastic and mocking sense, to be clear.
Yeah. Alright. But you know what I mean. It's like, it's still a very Manny thing to do. And you don't expect Manny to be anybody but himself, but he's still given enough space to grow. And yeah, I want more of that in games. Playing this again made me realize I want more of that in games.
Yeah, and I want to say that his interactions that are, more for the player's sake are still true to his character. Well, it's, kind of has a weird relationship with the fourth wall, it's still... besides its inherent, gameplay function, it's honestly not too immersion-breaking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because all of this dialogue is also contained to stuff outside of conversations with other characters. So there's a boundary there. Like, when you're in conversation with a character, you don't break the fourth wall. You just don't. It's a different set of dialogue.
Yeah, they push the fourth wall responsibly, in a way that can add to the experience as a whole more than...
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's, some of the worst triggers for me are... irresponsible fourth wall breaking.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I can't even think of an example right now, but that's alright. They don't do that in this. It's really consistent. The characters are dynamic. I mean, not all of them change over time, but a few of them do.
Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of it is actually that they are consistent over such long periods of time. Like, their desires and wants remain the same. they still have the same values, I guess, even if what they're doing changes. So, we had to temporarily stop the recording because of people taking care of the lawn. No shade to them, it's just not very podcast friendly.
It's noisy.
It's noisy.
So, we're gonna wrap up our episode about Grim Fandango.
Seems like a natural time.
Yeah. It's a timeless, fun, curious, well-constructed puzzle game full of laughs.
Yeah, I just smile thinking about it. Like, maybe it's just, how recently I've played, or maybe that it's just been a thing in my life. We'll never know.
It's got style, it's got class, it manages to balance being lighthearted and serious.
Yeah, it really does. Just thinking about some of the topics that they touch on and some of the themes they bring in. Yeah, how they can remain funny and playful throughout all of that. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, they can keep a lot of those, iconic and funny moments going throughout the game, while also, the dramatic stuff and the tension doesn't fall flat either.
No, it's quite the feat to pull off all of that.
This game is legitimately just well written on so many different levels.
Yeah, I have a hard time thinking of, anything that's poorly expressed, except some bits are slightly dated, like some word choices are kind of, these days.
Yeah, there was one thing, near the beginning of the game that's like, oh yeah, that's a slur now.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, there we go.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's compared to some other things I have that have at least harkened back to 90s games of this sort of style, when the jokes didn't work, they felt like a product of their time and not just, I am too mature to find this funny.
Yeah. That's kind of the difference between timeless and nostalgia. And because it's timeless, I look forward to coming back to it a couple decades from now and seeing if it still holds up then. I want to say happy 25th anniversary to Grim Fandango. A timeless work deserving of the term classic, in my opinion. And
will people still be making essays on this in 25 more years? We'll see.
Yeah.
I hope we're not, quite honestly. I hope we've moved on to other things. I hope our arcs are dynamic.
Yeah.
But if not, as long as we don't turn into Roger Ebert, I will be proud. Which, that's foreshadowing. Okay, not for next episode, though.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, this is, a good old-fashioned point-and-click game, and I highly recommend it.
Yeah. It's the recommendation via Collab Not Multiplayer.
Seal of approval.
Yeah.
Or.
Or what? Or what?
Or you get a rant episode made about you. I don't know.
Rant episodes are not fun to make. I don't want to make one. It's true. It's absolutely true. So, next episode, we are going to be talking creepy. We're going to talk about the two Kill Monday games, Franbo and Little Misfortune. I don't think Little Misfortune's terribly creepy, just a little creepy. Franbo
It's unsettling.
It's unsettling, yes. And my personal recommendation is that you play Franbo and watch at least a walkthrough of Little Misfortune before that episode, because I want to talk about deeper stuff about the presentation of the game and the way it deals with trauma. So there's homework for people who want to follow along. There will be spoilers next episode. I'm warning you ahead of time.
Yeah, and one spoiler, not really spoiler, I will give you about, Franbo, is that it is real fucked up.
Yeah.
I have this friend of mine who went, oh, it's gonna be a fun point-and-click adventure about a girl and her cat. Well, it's some of those things.
There's undertones of that here and there, but most of the game, if you just look at a screenshot of that point, you can kind of get the impression that something's not right here.
Right.
We'll get into it next episode.
Next episode, yes. So
just be warned, we are opening up a box of...
It's messy. It's messy in there.
We're gonna need a trigger warning that one pretty bad.
Well, at least trigger warning the game. Our discussion might not need trigger warnings, but we'll see. we'll deal with that then. And I look forward to you all joining us, and thank you for listening today. This has been Collab Not Multiplayer, and I'm Giggleklutz.
I'm Honeyshuckleex.
And I am Sackbot Orbit.
Goodbye!
Bye!